I am the pastor of Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Seaboyne. I am also called to be the husband of one wife, my wonderful Mary. I'm the father of 5 children who are getting older just about every day. And these are all gifts from God. They are all callings, and I think balancing those callings is an ongoing struggle. You never get to a point where you feel you've got it solved, you've done it right, you've got a perfect harmony and balance, but this is part of having the blessing of having these vocations, is the burden of keeping them in tension, in a healthy tension. To have received a call into the holy ministry is something that you never feel worthy to bear, to exercise. It is a great privilege. You are entrusted by God with what I believe is the highest calling on earth, to serve the people of God, preaching His Word, sharing His sacraments, and the life that is in Jesus Christ. And I think that becomes part of the tension with family. That also is a very high calling. And I often feel guilty about how I have not kept that balance. And so I find myself almost in a state of continual repentance, trying to readjust my priorities, to exercise or to live out both of the callings, or the multiple callings that I've received. In thinking about the tensions I have felt between my callings as pastor and as father and husband, I think about earlier in my ministry especially, where I was always dealing with some kind of guilt. I was at the hospital visiting with somebody, or I'm driving down the street to a visit, or I'm sitting in a church meeting, and there's a voice in the back of my head saying, "You ought to be with your family." And then I'm with my family, just watching a movie or sitting at the table, and there's that voice saying, "You really need to be doing some church stuff. There's stuff piling up there, get to it." And so it was a lose-lose thing. Every time I was paying attention to one of my vocations, the devil was telling me, "No, you ought to be paying attention to this one." And I was feeling guilty no matter what I did. And I remember the day I was watching a Star Wars movie, I think it's The Empire Strikes Back, and Yoda says to Luke, "Your mind is never on what you're doing." I said, "That's me. My mind is never on what I'm doing. It's always in the other place." And I've really worked to be disciplined about having my mindset when I'm with my family, it's about them. There have definitely been times when I've had to say, I am sorry, I'm not being the father or the husband I should be. And I think a lot of times my wife, if she's upset for the sake of the kids. And she's likely to correct my course on that. And I will confess to my Bible study, I always do, I don't receive correction very well. I need to hear it. I know it's true, but I'll put up all my defenses and give me a couple hours to think about it, and I'll come around because I know that it is true. My father is just recently the former owner and manager of an Ace Hardware store in Western New York State. And that has been part of his life for about 25 years. Before that, he did a whole bunch of other stuff. Did lawnmower repair. He owned and operated a campground in the southern tier of New York. I always knew my dad loved me, but I don't think we were really good at communicating that until I grew up and got out of the house. I'll remember the day forever when my dad told me for the first time, "I'm proud of you." It was a Sunday when he had heard me preach and seen me conduct the services in God's house, when he said to me, "I'm proud of you." And it changed my world. I'd been waiting my whole life to hear that. Those were words I didn't even know I was longing to hear. And it made a lot of things in our relationship even better. There are a lot of guys that I think want to hear their father say, "I love you," or "I'm proud of you." But they are themselves so proud they can't admit that. For a lot of guys I know, being vulnerable is weakness, and they don't want to even express that this is something they're missing in their lives. When you're spending time visiting families who have maybe lost a loved one, and they have this sense of loss and regret that they did not spend enough time with this loved one, in the back of my mind I'm thinking, I'm here and not with my family, and I'm creating the same scenario for my own family. Knowing how much it has meant to me later in life to hear my dad talk about his love for me, his pride in me, I've tried to be intentional in sharing that with my kids, in saying it, and giving them hugs. And that's where that short little interaction, there are some days I come home from a church meeting and I haven't seen my kids all day, and they might be in bed, but they're not sleeping yet. And I'll make a point to visit them in their bedroom and just give them a hug and tell them I love them.